So you're all certainly aware that my posting schedule has hit a snag again. Last month, I was supposed to provide all patrons with a review of the iCarly episode, I Date a Bad Boy. Well, that's been pushed back, probably all the way to the fall. At least this time you can probably all guess why things have been turned upside down. Look, there's no denying that so many of us are on edge right now. Whether you think it's right or not, the world has been injected with a huge dose of fear and mistrust among everyone. And sadly, after doing that, among the people who are being targeted the most by the public and social media as the bad guys are anyone who can't find a way to think positive after being berated that all of humanity will die if we don't stop seeing each other. This has got me thinking more and more about emotions and the demands our society puts on us to not show them, especially not if showing them makes everyone else uncomfortable. I make no doubt that I was highly influenced in my life by characters such as Garfield and Eeyore, characters who were never known for seeing the sunny side of things. But these characters taught me that being honest with yourself is among the most important things in the world. That you can't just always do what society says you have to do if it affects your own personal well-being. And anytime I think about this, there's one particular TV episode I keep coming back to, one that had a profound impact on me. That would be the episode of The Simpsons, Moaning Lisa. It was one of the very first episodes of the series and remains one of my favorites, for multiple reasons, which I'll explain as we get into this. But primarily, this episode was Inside Out before Inside Out. And for an episode that came out in the show's fledgling weeks, when the whole Bart Simpson rebel attitude was what was really selling the show, that's actually a pretty impressive accomplishment. And this really seems like a time when a lot of people need to be reminded of it. So, let's begin. The episode starts with Lisa clearly having something on her mind, as she is completely oblivious to the usual craziness that is going on for a morning in the Simpson house. Though she does aid Homer in finding his lost keys.
I've only got 2 cupcakes for the 3 of you.
Just take mine. A simple cupcake will bring me no pleasure.
We then quickly move to school, where her mindset is affecting her activities, like going off-key in music class, but especially just being a standing target in dodgeball in gym. It's in these scenes where we get a basic summary of what's going on in her head.
Just tell me why you weren't getting out of the way of those balls.
I'm too sad. I'm wailing out for the homeless family living out of its car. The Iowa farmer whose land has been taken away by unfeeling bureaucrats.
We'll get back to this in a bit, but for now we cut to the episode's side plot, which is pretty good in its own right. It focuses on Bart and Homer's long-running battle in a boxing video game, where the all-time score is a little one-sided.
And in the lavender trunks, with a record of 0 wins and 48 defeats, humiliating defeats, all of them by knockout.
Must you do this every time?
Homer, the human punching bag, Simpson. Whoa, 3 seconds, folks, a new record.
God, it's like me going up against Soda Popinski. Though for what it's worth, that drunk Ruski never actually punched my head off. Anyway, it's while Bart massacres Homer that Lisa comes home with her first ever note from school, stating, of course, about her being too sad. Believe it or not, Homer is actually willing to listen to her, something else I'll touch on later.
I'm just wondering, what's the point? Would it make any difference at all if I never existed? How can we sleep at night when there's so much suffering in the world?
One could argue that this is essentially where Lisa's eventual reputation of being a political activist began, but for now, this was a pretty big move on the show's part to feature a young character actually having thoughts like this. It's one of the deepest bits of character display I remember seeing from one this age for the time that it aired. And it certainly is a much deeper way of showing that kids can think like adults rather than just having them spew potty language all the time. Okay, I promise to try and hold back on the South Park jabs on this one. A good part of the second act is just filler, though we do get this joke about Maggie loving the TV more than her siblings, and another game of Bart being even more merciless to Homer than Mike Tyson circa 1988. Before we get another pretty powerful scene with Homer and Lisa, where he first tries to blame her for his loss, but the moment she starts crying, he completely changes his tune.
Go ahead, play your blues if it'll make you happy.
No, that's okay, Dad. I'll just work on my fingering. Unless my fingers clacking on the keys is too loud for you.
Let's hear it. You just clack as loud as you want, Lise.
This, to me, remains one of the most underappreciated scenes in the show's long history. It shows that even with all of his character flaws and bungling, Homer Simpson always has been a caring father who can realize when he's made a mistake and quickly try to make things right. And here, the creators didn't have to make him cause an ecological disaster that caused the government to put the whole town in a giant snow globe to make that known. It's just incredibly simple and something that many families and parents can almost certainly relate to. Anyway, after that, Lisa hears someone else's saxophone music playing and just has to hunt it down. And it's here we're first introduced to the character Bleeding Gums Murphy. The two bond over jazz and blues music, and Bleeding Gums is the first person to seem to really understand what Lisa is going through.
The blues isn't about feeling better. It's about making other people feel worse and making a few bucks while you're at it.
So, of course, it has to get broken up by Marge, who just happened to know exactly where Lisa was so she could show up and drag her home. I should point out that just before this, Marge had this dream about where as a kid, she was pressured by her mother into smiling all the time. I'm sure that has no impact on this story. The next day, as Homer starts looking for help from arcade kids in order to beat Bart at the game, and Marge tries to get Bart to be more interactive with Lisa, which for Bart means prank calling Moe's Tavern.
Jock strap. Hey guys, I'm looking for a jock strap.
It was season 1. They had to shoehorn that running gag into every other episode. Marge tells Lisa on their drive to music practice that she needs to smile and gives her this speech.
Well, it doesn't matter how you feel inside, you know? It's what shows up on the surface that counts. That's what my mother taught me. Take all your bad feelings and push them down, all the way down, past your knees until you're almost walking on them. And then you'll fit in, and you'll be invited to parties, and boys will like you.
Yeah, I was around 10 years old when this first came out, and even I knew back then that whole spiel was a crock. But once they arrive at the school, Marge sees the phoniness of Lisa having to pretend happy play out, and just up and snaps.
So that's where she gets it.
And that's when this happens.
I was wrong. I take it all back. Always be yourself. You want to be sad, honey? Be sad. We'll write it out with you. And when you get finished feeling sad, we'll still be there.
I don't think I can overstate just how powerful this speech is. The idea that we need to let people not be happy when they don't feel happy was brought up in other cartoons of the 80s. Hey, what do you think was Grumpy Bear's purpose? But for a show like The Simpsons, a show that even at this early stage was meant to be sardonic toward not just animation but family sitcoms as well, for them to deliver this message, it really showed just how deep this show and its characters could really be. And it, of course, is exactly what Lisa needed to hear, as once she knows her family will be there to support her through her difficult time, she is finally able to smile again. And the episode wraps up with Homer just about to beat Bart for the first time before Marge literally pulls the plug on their games, before taking the whole family to see Mr. Bleeding Gums performing Lisa's own song at his jazz club.
I got this bratty brother. He bugs me every day. And this morning my own mother Gave my last cupcake away. My dad acts like he belongs, y'all. He belongs in the zoo.
What?
I'm the saddest kid in grade number 2.
Like I said, this was one of my favorite episodes of the show, even back when I saw it in its first run, though mainly for the side plot back then. But in more recent years, it's taken on a whole new importance, and its main message is one that needs to be repeated now more than ever. We can't just be positive all the time, especially not when times are tough. People need to be able to express their emotions for the sake of their own mental health. And it's then, more than ever, that we need to respect their need to feel those emotions. If someone seems to be acting negative all the time, maybe there are reasons for it. And maybe we should search for what those reasons are before just dismissing someone as ruining things for everyone else. It's only by being sad, being angry, being fearful that we often remember what made us happy and make us work to try and restore what made us happy. We address and deal with our problems. We can't just mask them behind a smiling facade all the time. Sometimes the biggest smiles hide the worst pain, and it's only by showing displeasure over that pain that we are able to heal. And often what people need in order to heal is time and support. Time to ride out those emotions and the support that tells them their true friends will always be there for them. When times are tough like this, often letting people have their emotions is the best thing you can do.